Have you ever felt like you're just standing in the middle of a storm of negativity?
Yeah, like criticism or maybe insults.
Exactly. Or just, this general wave of hostility coming your way, and it feels really personal. And your first instinct, your gut reaction is just screaming, get out, run.
Oh, absolutely. That's that primal urge, isn't it, to flee discomfort, escape the pain. It's basically how we're wired.
Totally. But what if the wisdom we're diving into today actually suggests the opposite?
The opposite of running.
Yeah, what if the real power isn't in escape, but in, standing firm? In a way that might totally surprise you.
Well, that's pretty much the core of what we're getting into today. We're digging into an ancient commentary related to Buddhist texts, specifically looking at an account tied to the Dhammapada.
Okay.
And it describes this really intense incident where the Buddha himself faced this public onslaught of verbal abuse. Seriously harsh stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so our mission here is to pull out the timeless insights, from this specific story.
Exactly. How do you handle hostility when it's right there, in your face? What is real inner strength? What does that actually look like?
And also, can surprising things happen, like transformations, even in these really negative setups?
That's the big question. And the setting for all this, the place it happened, was the ancient city of Kosambi.
All right, Kosambi. So let's picture it. The Buddha is staying there. And you said the source material connects this specific story to verses from the Nāgavaggavaṇṇanā.
Yeah, the elephant chapter, and also the commentary on the Attanovatthu, the vigilance chapter. It links them together.
Got it. And how did this whole mess start? Does the source say?
Oh, it's very specific. It points to this woman named Magandiya.
Magandiya, okay.
Apparently, she was holding some kind of grudge, seeking revenge because she couldn't cause trouble for some other women she was upset with.
Right.
So she couldn't get them, and she pivoted. She decided, okay, I'm going to target the Buddha, who's referred to in the text as the ascetic Gautama.
And her plan was pretty direct, wasn't it?
Extremely direct. The source says she literally bribed people, just, regular folks in the city.
Bribed them to do what?
To insult and abuse the Buddha. While he was walking around inside the city, just yell things at him.
Wow. Okay, so not like a subtle campaign.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just a few disgruntled people either.
No.
The source actually specifies the crowd included all sorts of people, even slaves and laborers are mentioned. So like a real cross-section of the city's population.
From ordinary people roped into this.
Yeah. And their mindset, according to the text, they were described as having wrong views.
Wrong views.
And also being not pleased with the triple gem. Which, basically means they were already kind of opposed to or unhappy with the Buddha, his teachings, the whole community.
So they were maybe predisposed to accept the bribe?
Exactly. Made them easy targets for Magandiya's plan. And the insults, well, they weren't holding back.
No whispering, I take it.
Definitely not. The source says they followed the Buddha through the streets, yelling this list of really awful things at him.
How awful are we talking? Like, what kinds of things?
Okay, think public humiliation on a grand scale. The source actually lists 10 specific insults.
10? Like what?
Well, they called him a thief. Foolish, deluded.
Okay. Pretty standard insults, maybe.
It gets worse. They compared him to animals. A camel, an ox, a donkey.
Ouch.
And they weren't just name-calling. They were, condemning him, saying he was destined for hell, that he was born in the animal realm.
Whoa.
That he had no good destination ahead of him, only a bad one was expected. Really damning stuff.
Man, that is incredibly vicious and so public. This wasn't just, muttered insults. It was a planned, organized verbal attack out in the open.
Absolutely. A very aggressive, coordinated, public display of hostility.
So, okay, the Buddha's walking through this. What about the people with him? Ananda, how did he react?
Well, Ananda, hearing all this, he understandably got pretty distressed. I mean, who wouldn't?
Right.
And his immediate suggestion, the very human thing to say was, okay, this is horrible. Let's just get out of Kosambi right now. Let's go to another city. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Totally makes sense. Just escape the abuse. So how did the Buddha respond to that? To just getting away from the pain?
He didn't just say no. He used this really powerful technique. He asked Ananda a counter question. Repeatedly.
Which was?
He asked, okay, Ananda, if we go to that other city and the people there insult us just like this, what do we do then? And if we go to the next city after that and the same thing happens, what then? You're pressing the point.
Right. So you can keep running, but the problem might just follow you. You're just changing the scenery for the same attack?
Exactly that. It really highlights that just changing your external situation, running away, doesn't actually solve the core issue, especially if the issue is dealing with conflict or hostility itself.
Okay, so if escape isn't the answer, what principle did the Buddha suggest instead for handling this kind of conflict?
The principle he laid out was this: where a dispute, where a conflict arises, the path is to settle it right there.
Settle it there.
Yeah, in that place before moving on. Don't just, bail when it gets tough.
Settle it there. That sounds incredibly difficult when you're the one being attacked like that.
No kidding.
And Ananda, did he confirm how widespread this was? It wasn't just a few people shouting?
Yes, Ananda specifically confirmed it. He said everyone who was involved, that whole big crowd who took the bribes, including, the laborers, the regular citizens, all of them were joining in. It was like a mob mentality.
Okay, so the scene is set, intense, public, organized abuse. The idea to run is rejected. The principle is settle it here. How do you even begin to settle something like that when you're under attack? That's when the Buddha introduces this amazing image, isn't it?
He does. He brings in the central simile. He compares himself to a battle elephant.
Battle elephant.
Yeah, specifically one that has entered combat, gone onto the battlefield.
Not just any elephant, one in the thick of it, taking hits.
Precisely. And the key idea here, the insight from this image, the Buddha is saying, look, facing hostility isn't about dodging the arrows of abuse.
It's not.
No. It's about developing the inner strength to stand there like that elephant, letting the arrows hit you without collapsing inside.
Wow.
He actually says that enduring these words, these verbal attacks coming from, as the text says, many ill-behaved people, that ability to bear it, that's his burden. My Humberto, my burden.
Framing endurance itself as a necessary burden, like the elephant carrying the weight of the arrows hitting it, that really puts a different spin on just standing there and taking it.
It does. It elevates it. And it's this specific idea, this endurance, that he then unpacks in those verses from the Nāgavaggavaṇṇanā, the elephant chapter.
Okay, let's break down that first verse. It's directly about endurance, right?
Right. The main message is, enduring abusive speech is like a noble elephant enduring arrows in battle. And crucially, because the multitude is ill-behaved.
Oh, wait, abusive speech. Does the source define that more?
Yeah, it calls it Attanovatthu and defines it as speech that kind of crosses a line based on 8 ignoble ways of speaking. Basically, harmful, unethical speech, transgressive speech.
Got it. And the reason we need to endure it is because the multitude is ill-behaved. What does that mean here?
The source explains it like this. Many people, Bahujano, speak just based on their desires, their moods, their, unskillful states.
Which naturally causes friction.
Exactly. Causes friction, conflict. So enduring that, overlooking it, bearing it without flinching internally, like the elephant doesn't flinch physically, that is the burden. It's about maintaining your inner stability when the outside world is throwing words at you.
All right, so lesson 1 is develop the inner resilience, the capacity not to flinch when the verbal arrows fly. Because, well, frankly, a lot of people speak unskillfully.
That's the gist. And the second verse builds right on that. It shifts the focus to the idea of being trained.
Trained, like training animals. You mentioned oxen and horses.
Yeah, the verse starts there. It notes that trained animals, oxen, horses, they're valuable, right? They're used in society. They're used in assemblies, which the source says could be places like parks or playgrounds for transport. Kings ride trained animals. They have a practical use in the world. They're trained.
Okay. Useful, trained beings. But then the verse pivots.
Big pivot. He says the best trained being among humans is the one who endures abusive speech.
Whoa. Okay, that's a fascinating contrast. So trained animals are useful for external tasks.
Right.
But the best trained human is someone who has mastered their internal reaction to verbal attacks.
It completely reframes what trained means, doesn't it? It's not about external skill or control over something else. It's about internal composure, resilience, especially when provoked.
So how does the source define that, the best trained person?
It emphasizes that this person is someone who endures these verbal attacks repeatedly, like again and again, without reacting, without being internally disturbed by it.
So real mastery isn't about controlling the world outside.
No.
It's mastering your own response.
Precisely. which leads directly into the third verse, which kind of takes this whole training idea to its absolute peak.
Okay, this is the one that lists different kinds of animals: mules, thoroughbreds, elephants.
Exactly. It lists several types of highly valued, well-trained animals: mules, known for strength; swift Ajanior horses from the Sindhu region, quick learners; and Mahanaga, great elephants, also called Kunjara. The verse acknowledges, yeah, these are good, vara'a, excellent even.
But there's always a but, isn't there? There's something even better than all these amazing trained animals.
Yes. This is sort of the mic drop moment in the source. The core message of verse 3 is that someone who is self-trained, Attanovatthu, is superior to all of them. Better than the best horse, the strongest mule, the greatest elephant.
Self-trained, Attanovatthu. Okay, what does that mean here? Does the source give a specific definition for self-trained?
It does, and this is where the real power of the teaching comes through. The source defines self-trained as a person trained by themselves through their own cultivated state.
How?
Through developing themselves using the four noble paths, and crucially, becoming free from ill will. That's key.
Freedom from ill will.
Yes. The text explicitly says this inner self-training, which is rooted in really deep ethical and mental development, and importantly, the absence of hostility or reactivity. That is the highest possible form of training, way beyond training any animal.
Okay, hang on. So the ultimate mastery isn't just enduring or not reacting on the surface. It's about the profound inner work, cultivating wisdom, ethics, concentration, and actually rooting out ill will from your own mind.
That's it.
That self-training makes you the best trained being. It shifts the entire focus inward, doesn't it?
Completely. Real strength isn't found in pushing back against the arrows or running away from them. It's in developing an inner state, an inner quality that's unshakable because it's grounded in wisdom and free from that reactive anger or hurt.
This is such a powerful teaching, especially when you picture the scene, the Buddha facing that intense, organized hostility. But the story isn't quite over, is it? There's one more twist, and it's maybe the most surprising part of the whole account.
It really is. According to the source material, something completely unexpected happened right after the Buddha finished delivering this teaching. After talking about the elephant, endurance, self-training.
What happened?
The source states that all of that large crowd...
insulting him?
Yes. The ones who had taken the bribes, the ones standing in the streets and at the intersections yelling those awful things at him.
Okay.
They all attained the fruit of stream entry. Attanovatthu.
Wait, all of them? The people calling him a camel, a thief, destined for hell. The ones paid to abuse him. They all reached stream entry.
That's what the source clearly says. All of that great crowd, Sabapi Samaparsa, attained stream entry.
Okay, wow. For listeners who might not be deep in the Buddhist terminology here, what exactly does stream entry signify? That sounds like a pretty big deal, a major shift.
Oh, it's a foundational transformation. Truly profound. Stream entry, Saddapati, is considered the very first stage of genuine spiritual awakening or enlightenment in this tradition.
The first stage?
Yes. It's the point where a person gets this direct, non-conceptual glimpse of reality. It breaks through certain deep-seated misunderstandings about, self, suffering the way things are.
And what happens then?
It's described as irreversible. Once you've entered the stream, you are guaranteed eventually to reach full liberation, full awakening. You won't fall back into certain lower states of being or views. It's a radical shift in perspective in your entire being.
Wow. So to go from being part of a hostile, bribed mob holding wrong views to achieving the first stage of irreversible awakening for the entire crowd.
Yes.
That's an astonishing transformation described in this source. It really challenges a lot of our usual ideas about how change happens or who is capable of it.
It certainly does. It suggests something incredibly powerful was transmitted or catalyzed in that moment, whether it was purely the teaching itself or the Buddha's presence, his state of being while enduring the abuse, or maybe even some hidden potential within those people themselves that was ready to awaken.
It's hard to process.
It is.
So, okay. We've journeyed from those hostile streets in ancient Kosambi. We've seen the barrage of verbal arrows. We've learned from that powerful image of the battle elephant standing its ground. We've understood this profound value placed on inner self-training, that freedom from ill will is the highest mastery.
Right.
And then we've kind of had to grapple with this completely unexpected outcome for the entire hostile crowd.
So now the question is, how do we bring this back to you listening right now? Because, okay, maybe we don't have crowds literally paid to insult us on the street.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But The arrows are still flying, aren't they? The arrows of negativity, unfair criticism, online comments, difficult colleagues, friction in the family.
Yeah, the relevance of endurance feels huge here. What does it really mean for us today to develop that capacity to absorb unfairness or insults without being totally thrown off balance?
What does it mean to not flinch internally when someone's words are aimed to hurt?
And then the power of self-training. It becomes incredibly practical, doesn't it? How can this idea of working on our own inner state, cultivating compassion, wisdom, letting go of ill will, how can that help us navigate these modern arrows?
It's such a different approach. It's not about trying to control the other person, the one shooting the arrow.
Right. Or just constantly trying to run away from every difficult situation or person.
Exactly. It's about transforming the target ourselves.
And finally, that really surprising ending, the crowd attaining stream entry. What does that suggest to you about the potential for change, even in people who seem completely stuck in negativity or holding really harmful views or acting out of hostility?
It really makes you pause, doesn't it? It suggests possibilities we might normally dismiss.
So we've unpacked this incredible ancient account of dealing with intense public hostility. We drew out the wisdom of the battle elephant analogy.
And highlighted the profound power of inner self-training as the ultimate form of mastery.
And we've held up that frankly astonishing outcome for the hostile crowd, their complete transformation.
Yeah.
So maybe here's the provocative thought to leave you with to sort of mull over. What does this story really suggest about where transformation begins? Not just for handling hostility aimed at us, but about the potential for deep and maybe even radical change in the most unexpected places, perhaps within ourselves, and perhaps even sometimes in those we interact with.
It's a powerful question to just sit with.
Yeah.
Where does that change really start?